so this is the 03 Illustrator ILB tutorial, and we're going to be working off of the 03 Illustrator A file. But first, because I'm gonna show you today how you can scan objects and then create vector-based files from those scanned objects. So what you're gonna do is we're actually gonna start out in Photoshop, and then we're gonna drag the Photoshop document that we create into that Illustrator document. So go ahead and open Photoshop, and you also need to have a computer with a scanner. Okay, so you'll have to be doing this one in the lab unless you own your own scanner. And you can just be at this initial startup window here, because what we're gonna do is, so I'm gonna open up my scanner, and if you're in the lab, you want to obviously get a computer with a scanner, and if the scanner doesn't show up when you go through this file step, then if you just unplug the scanner and plug it back in, usually that's enough to reset it and make it show up as an option. So you're gonna go to File, Import, Images from Device. And then it should automatically just detect that the scanner is plugged in, and you should even hear the scanner starting to make noises, which you can hear mine starting to make some noises. And it's gonna do this initial scan of the object. And so what we're going to be doing for this is you're taking one of the objects that you found, one of the pieces of trash, one of the pieces of junk that you found during your walk, and you're going to be creating an icon from it. And so notice that as I was talking, I was repositioning this bounding box, so it only included the area where the junk is located. I want to make sure that my resolution is set to 300. The size will vary depending on what size you made this little square here. And I want to scan it to my flash drive. And then I can name it. So I can name it icon, would be something I might want to name it. I can name it 04 or 03 icon, so that it clumps together with some of my other 03 documents. And then make sure that it's a JPEG here, and then I'm going to click scan. Okay, if you don't see scan, that's because you didn't put a bounding box. So even if there isn't one, you can actually click and drag one out. I'm going to press delete though, because that's going to make an extra scan that I don't want. And you want to make sure that you have a bounding box here, because then you'll be able to scan it. So I can click scan, and then I'll hear the scanner making a few more noises, and it's going to scan that document and then open it right up into Photoshop. And there's a few things that we're going to do to edit this document. One thing that I might want to do with this one, because I put it in upside down, is if I go to image rotation 180 degrees, now it's right side up. The other thing that I'll want to do is go to image adjustments, brightness, contrast. And what I'm aiming to do here is get this white background to be as white as possible, and then the dark colors to be kind of as dark as possible. If you drag it too much, like that's a little too cartoon-like. I don't want it to be beyond photorealistic. So maybe for mine, 48 brightness, 31 contrast seems to be a good number. And then I can click OK. And then notice how it didn't put a layer there, because this was a destructive editing style and I can't go back and change it anymore. So now I'm going to go to File, Save, and then I'm going to just leave the default settings here, so quality 12, and then click OK. And now I can actually close out Photoshop, because I'm not going to use Photoshop anymore. And then I'm going to open up Illustrator, and I'm going to go to my 03 ILA file. Okay, And I'm going to position this window so that I can see my flash drive here, so I can click on it. And then I'm going to find my O3 icon file. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to first go back to Illustrator and create a new layer. And I'm going to double click and hold and type in icon. And now I'm going to go back to my O3 folder. I'm going to make sure icon is highlighted. And then I'm going to click and drag this out onto my workspace here. Okay, if I find these other layers distracting, I can actually make them invisible. Okay, so I'm just going to, so now all I see is my icon, but everything is still there, and I'm not going to accidentally move lines around or things like that while I'm doing this. So what I did to do that is I just clicked on the little square where the eyeball was and made the eyeball disappear. So the layer's still there, you just can't see it right now. Okay, and now when I have this JPEG selected, I actually have some options that come across the top here. And the image trace is the button that I want. Okay, if I just click on it, it's going to do a default image trace, which may or may not be good for my image. In my case, it was not good. Okay, so I'm going to press Command Z to undo that. And instead of pressing the actual button, I'm going to click on this little arrow next to it, which gives me all the different options. And so high fidelity photo and low fidelity photo, those ones work pretty well as far, and also 16 colors. It was probably doing more like a silhouette, which then made a lot of it disappear when I just clicked the button. So I'm going to select, we'll select low fidelity photo because I want it to be kind of a simpler icon, but I still want it to retain all the color that is in the image. And so then it will, once I click that, select it from the drop-down menu, then this window will come up, and I'll have to wait a few moments while it goes through some different processes. But what it's doing is it's turning your image from a pixel-based document into a mathematical line-based document. Okay, and so now I look at it, and that looks pretty good. If it didn't look good, I could press Command Z and try one of those other options. So just keep trying the options until you get something that looks, you know, like a more simplified version of the image that you scanned in. Okay, then I'm going to have to press expand. Okay, and now I can see that it's turned all of those points into little vector lines. But right now I've selected all of them because I'm in the black arrow. So I'm actually going to go to the white arrow. I'm going to click on nothing over here. And then I'm going to click this box because I don't want this gray box around it. And I'm going to press delete. Okay. You also, if you press Command plus, maybe you zoom in. You can hold the space bar to reposition. And you notice there's a few other little things that show up, right? So maybe this little dot here, I clicked and dragged over the whole dot, and I can press delete to get rid of it. Maybe I don't like this little shadow that's showing up here, and I want to delete all those little shadow points. I can actually click on those with the white arrow and get rid of them. Okay, so you can kind of get rid of a few different things throughout your image just to kind of clean it up a little bit and make it into an interesting icon. All right, so I'm going to press Command minus to zoom out. And now I'm going to turn back on my other layers. Okay, actually I'm going to leave my map layer off because in the end that map layer is not going to be part of my image. I can also go back to the black arrow, select these funky lines that you just turned in to show that you could do it, and delete those. So I just clicked on each one using the black arrow and press delete. And then now I can reposition this where I want it. It might be a little large. What I'm going to do here is maybe think about somehow indicating where that object was found. So maybe I found it along this path here. I'm going to hold shift and resize it. I could, since it's vector based, squish it, but since I want it to still kind of look like that starburst wrapper that I found, I'm going to just hold shift and resize it. And then find an interesting place to put this, maybe in an area where there's not a lot of streets, or not a lot of clutter. And then I could do different things to signify where that object came from. Maybe it would be just simply placing it over the path in that area and making it a little bit smaller, okay? But I kind of like the shape of it. Well, it doesn't look bad there. I could do that. But I kind of like the shape of it and I like it to be big, so I'm actually going to keep it here. And then I could do something like create a line that goes from here to here and press escape. Right now though, because whatever I made last, I didn't have a fill or a stroke. So now when I click off of that line, it's like it disappears. But it's still there if I hover my mouse over it. I'm in the black arrow now. If I hover my mouse over it, I can select it. And I can change it from no to maybe blue, okay? I want it to be a different color than the street. Actually, that's still kind of visually similar to the street. Let's pick maybe red. That goes well with the object. So I want to pick something that's visually distinct from a road because I don't want people to confuse this for a road or a path, because what it's doing is it's telling someone where that came from. The other thing that I could do is you can create more of a triangle type shape. So maybe I would click back on my pen tool and I would create this sort of interesting triangle that kind of shows where that comes from. Notice how, let's zoom in a second. Notice how this line is actually on top of the icon. It would look a lot better if it was underneath the icon, okay? And so that's something I can actually do with layer ordering, right? So I was drawing those red lines onto my icon layer. So I can open that up and I can see that path right here, okay? And then the group is the icon that I created. So if I click on this path and drag it down, now it goes under it. That looks a lot better, okay? A lot cleaner. The other thing that's a little funky about this line is this like really dramatic point. And so I could either move it up a little bit so that that point at least pointed to the place where I wanted it to. So that looks pretty good. What I did there is I'm actually using my arrow keys to kind of bump this around. So you can use arrow keys if you just want to like bump something just a touch. So that looks pretty good, but maybe if I wanted it to have a rounded corner, I could also go to my stroke panel over here. And right now it just says the weight of the line, which is 1 point. But if I click on this little icon and click on show options, now I've got all these different options and I can actually make this have a rounded cap on it. Oh, that's the cap. We're not looking at those though. The caps are actually hidden under here. We want the corner to be rounded. There we go. Okay, so now it has this like kind of nice rounded corner. I can bump it back down here. So maybe you like that better. Okay, so that's how you can change the different types of strokes. If you weren't seeing the stroke panel, again, you can go to Window and then Stroke here, and then if it's not selected, then it's not showing up. If it is selected, then it's somewhere over here and you just have to find it. Like maybe it's hidden under something and you can click around and find it, okay? But again, you have to click on more options in order for these other options to show up. The other thing that's nice is you could make this a dashed line, okay? And so I can have a 12-point dash with maybe 4-point gap in it. Maybe 12 points is too high, so I'd want to change this to a 6-point dash with a 4-point gap. Okay, and so these are different ways that you can visually distinguish one type of line from the other, right? Because you don't want people to think that this is a path that you can walk on, because that would be confusing. You want to make it visually distinct so that it looks like it's a different thing, okay? So that we know that when we look at it, the visual language is clear, that it's showing us where this came from, as opposed to this is another street that you could drive down, right? Then the other thing that you can do is you can hand draw different icons. So maybe maybe you have some other icon that you have either hand drawn or you scanned it in. We'll just go ahead and use this original 03 icon. So I'm actually going to click and drag this in again. And this time I'm going to go back to my layers panel here, close this up, and actually put it onto my icon layer. But since I'm hand tracing, which is a different thing, I'm actually going to make a new layer by clicking the new layer button here, and then click and drag that icon so it's on that layer. And I can tell that by, if I just push the little eyeball, I can see, oh yep, it's on layer 4 because it disappears when I click that eyeball. And so the other thing that I want you to do for this tutorial, so you've got this live traced version of the object, and then you could also, if you just wanted like a simple black outline on the object, there's none of those image tracing options that are going to do that for you. So what you would have to do then is use the pen tool and basically trace out that shape. Okay, and your object is going to be whichever object you scanned. Okay, it won't be this starburst wrapper. And you would just click along on the outside of the object. Oop. And oops. Somehow I clicked off of the object, and you can actually start a line from an existing line if you click back on the original line. So what I just did there is, so if I press escape, so somehow I ended up where I wasn't selected on that object anymore, or on that line, but I still want it to be. Probably because I should have been zoomed in. I was doing it from way far away. But if I click on this anchor point and I have that little slash that'll show up on my cursor, it doesn't add a new anchor point. It just connects me to my old anchor point. Okay, so you can, so even a line that you made yesterday, you can still add more to it if you realize that you need to start from where you left off. Okay, and so I'm just clicking along. I'm tracing around this object. And this is just good practice for being able to use the pen tool. Okay, so think of it as just good practice. I'm using the roller on my mouse button to kind of move down here so I can get to this other point, because I can't use the spacebar hand tool at this point because I'm in the middle of a tool. Okay, and I'll just keep clicking around until, and I'm going to just start doing it a lot faster now, but you get the point. You should do yours more carefully. Just pause the video and do it. Also, I can't get over here just yet, so one thing that I could do is press the escape key. Now I can enact the hand, move it, reposition it, and then pick back up where I left off with that line. Okay, because sometimes when you, sometimes when you zoom in, you're a little too zoomed in and it's hard to get to the place where you want to be. All right, so now I'm back to the beginning here. Okay, and so maybe I'd want this icon to have fill to it. So maybe red or something. So So I'd have to go to my black arrow. I'd have to select my path. Oops. Oh, somehow I drew these lines on layer 2. You always want to make sure you know where you're selected, where you're drawing here. So let's see. If I scroll down through the layers, I can see that I'm selected on this, which that's the reason it's not looking like it's red, is because this path is actually underneath the starburst picture. Okay, so if I click on this path, and I can tell that it's the thing I have selected because there's a little square here, a little red square that tells me what I have selected. So it's telling me it's something in layer 2, and then I open up layer 2 and I can find the actual path that I have selected. So I'm going to just click and drag that up. Now it has a fill. Okay. And then I can change maybe the stroke to none because I don't want it to have a stroke. And then once I'm done tracing, and maybe I would, for this object, I might actually want to, I'll change the stroke back to none. None is kind of a good way to work because then it wasn't covering up my object as I was dragging out the line. And then you can always change it later. So, but maybe I would want to put in a line in here and then create this area to be yellow and then this area to be red. So that might be something interesting. So creating icons. So it takes a little bit longer, but it's a little more stylized and it's a little more original to you. And that might be a fun way to create icons. And you only have to create 6 of them, and that didn't take that long, right? But anyways, once you are done with the icon and you like how it looks, you want to select that linked file here and then press delete. Oops. But I was selected on everything, so it just, all right, so let's click on nothing, click on this file. Now I just have the linked file selected and press delete. Oh. And then my path is still there. It's just, it doesn't have a fill or a stroke, so I can't see it. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna press Command minus. I'm gonna zoom out. And so then this is also what I wanna see is, and this one you don't have to connect. You don't have to do some sort of interesting connection arrow. You can just place it on your document. But when you turn in your file, I'll want to see a live trace version of the object and then a hand traced version of the object. And some of the things that we added, you can leave in the actual lines of the building. You will also be making the map layer invisible, so when you export it, it won't show up. And then, but the last thing that I want to show you how to do, because sometimes icons can be created from simple geometric shapes. So say you found like a pop bottle, well that's almost like a rectangle, right? But then it has a shape cut out of it for the, where you drink out of the pop bottle, right? So you might want to use the Pathfinder tool, which is another useful shape making tool in Illustrator. And so we're gonna do that. So what I want you to do first is you're gonna create a rectangle. And you can do this along the bottom, maybe where there isn't as much stuff. Again, let's go ahead and make a new layer. It's nice to make new layers for different things on your document. So we'll make a new layer, make sure it's highlighted, and then this is where the rectangles are gonna go. Okay, and I have a fill of red right now, which is perfect. So I'm gonna make a rectangle. So I click on the rectangle tool over on the left-hand side. The rectangle tool could be hidden under any one of these tools. You just click and hold to get it to show up. So I'm going to click and drag out a rectangle, and then I'm also going to click and drag out an ellipse. With the ellipse, though, I want the fill to be a different color so you can kind of see the different things that are happening. Okay, so I've got a red rectangle and a blue ellipse. Okay, and you can choose whichever colors you want. So I'm going to have these two things overlapping one another, and I'm going to move them up just a little bit. And I selected both of them by clicking and dragging over the objects. Notice how though when I did that here, it's actually selecting some of my lines. So I'm going to lock all the layers except for the layer that I'm working on. So I did that by clicking on this little square over here to turn on the locks. And I am going to copy and paste this object several times. I'm going to look how many times I need to have it show. You can also do this because you're going to need this panel. So the panel that we're going to use is the Pathfinder panel. So if you go to Window, Pathfinder, then that will show up over here. And we're going to try each one of these methods. So that's how many times we need to copy and paste. So we've got 4, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's going to be a lot. We might want to resize this to be a little bit smaller, but we can do that in mass once we copy and paste it 10 times. So I'll show you how to do that in just a second. All right, so press Command V to paste it. And you're going to paste it 10 times. Another thing that I can do, instead of keeping to do it individually, I can actually select all of these, press Command C and copy, and then Command V, and then now I have more than I need. So I have 2, 4, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I have 2 extras, so I'll just select those, press delete. All right. So you can copy and paste multiples at the same time. Now, notice how they're not on my document anymore. So I'm going to select them all by clicking on like an area where there's nothing up in the upper left, dragging it over the whole group of objects. And then I'm going to squish these down. I'm not holding the Shift key because I don't actually care. Now they look like little toilet icons when you are building houses. So I want to position these though so they're all on the document. So maybe I need them to be even smaller. All right, perfect. Okay, any way that you want to fit them on there. Try not to cover up important things that you've just done in the tutorial like these up here. But now what I'm going to do is I am going to select the circle. I'm going to zoom in actually first. Then hold Shift and select the rectangle. So I have both of those things selected. The other way I could do this is if I click and drag over it. And I'm going to try each of these different shape modes here, okay, on my object. I have to be selected on 2 different shapes in order for this shape mode to work. Okay, and they each do different things. And you can see, that's why it's nice to have the 2 different colors, because you can see what they're all doing. Some of them are going to seem like they didn't do anything, but when we go back with the white arrow, we'll be able to see that they did do something. Okay, and I'm just going along and I'm trying each one of these. Okay, make sure you're selecting both the circle and the rectangle, and then you can click along. And try them each out, okay? And so they each saved a different part of the shape combination. And if you click on the white arrow, some of these, like this one is, just try to move them, okay? So if you move this one, all moves together. It's all one thing, okay? This one is 2 separate things though, so you could actually like reposition them a little bit. Same thing here. So this one retained the circle, but it actually divided it into 2, and then it just divided like made a puzzle basically out of it. Okay, so you can see how this one seemed to have done the exact same thing. Some of them will depend on which one is in front and which one's behind. This one just made lines of each of them, so then you can kind of warp those lines a little bit. So that is how you use the different Pathfinder tools, and that's how you can create really interesting, complex shapes that are based off of geometric shapes, or you can actually even create shapes like with the pen tool, like this, and then you could cut a chunk out of it if you wanted to. So it's just good to have a lot of different tools in your toolkit as far as how you can make things using the computer. And sometimes you find them useful, sometimes you don't. So maybe you'll use those in your final, maybe you won't, but when you turn in your tutorial, I want to see all of this, okay? And the way that you're going to save the document for credit, first you're going to go to File, and then for some reason I'm in the PDF version of my document, and I actually want to make sure I'm saving it as an AI file. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and change it to an AI, and then press Save. And apparently I already had that one. Oh, you know why? Because I was supposed to change it to a B. All right. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to change this from an A to a B. So I have my second one. And then I'm going to change it to an AI file here. Okay, and then I'm going to click Save, and then I'm going to click OK. And this will save an editable version of this document for me for later. And then I'm going to go to File, Save As, and this time I'm going to save it in order to turn it in to get credit for the tutorial. And then again, this is also the way you would save the document in order to send it to the print shop. Okay, so you're going to click Adobe PDF. It's already named properly, but we should always double check that, obviously. And you're going to click Save. And then in this window, you're going to deselect Preserve Illustrator Editing Capabilities. You're going to click Save PDF. If you get this warning, you can just click OK. And then it will have also saved it as a PDF. And again, this PDF will not be editable in Illustrator in the same way that you typically can edit files in Illustrator when they're saved properly. This is just so that it's a smaller file. And then that file, the O3 ILB folder here, oh, it did actually show up. There must have been an option, because it did actually, see how it actually put my map back in there. So if I don't want that map to show up, I would, instead of just having it be invisible, I would also have to delete it, okay, before I exported it. So, but for the one you turn in for the tutorial, it's fine to have that map in there. But when you turn in your final, you're definitely going to want to make sure that the maps don't show up. I'm going to leave the map on there. I don't want to delete it right now because I'm actually going to go in and still, like, obviously I still haven't added all my streets in, and I might want to add some houses in and, you know, really spiff it up for the final. So I'm actually going to leave the image of the map in there for now. But just know that for your final, you're going to want to make sure that it's gone completely. Okay, so that is the Illustrator 03 Illustrator B tutorial.